Hugh Hewitt live from Studio West, joined by United States Senator J.D. Vance. Senator Vance, welcome. First time I've called you that. Good to have you on this morning.
Thank you, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Just 15 minutes ago, Mitch Daniels announced he is not going to run for Senate in Indiana, thus leaving Jim Banks as the only declared candidate. Have you endorsed in that race yet?
Well, Hugh, it's interesting. One of the things I was going to do on your show is announce that I'm endorsing Jim Banks, who's a dear friend and a really good guy, and was very helpful to getting us across the finish line in Ohio. So I think we'll be a great conservative fighter for Indiana. I had not seen the news about Mitch Daniels. I had heard from people that he was likely not to run. Of course, he was a great governor of Indiana and an incredible Purdue University chancellor. But I think that obviously Jim's moment is now as a younger guy. I think he knows in some ways instinctively where the party is headed and where it needs to go, and I think he's the right guy for the job.
Now, JD, I know you don't want to be ageist, but you can say this to me. I'm 66. I am of the opinion that people should not run their first race for the Senate after the age of 50. Maybe 55, maybe 60, but definitely not after 60 because you got to be there 6 years before you even get to do anything.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, I generally think, Hugh, that we need some new blood in Washington. I think ultimately it's the voters' decision whether it's a 55-year-old, 65-year-old, or somebody younger. I do think that there is this sense that the millennials, the Gen X folks are getting an opportunity to really show what they're made of, and that's a good thing because we need it politically. We have far too many young people who are going to the left when we need them to vote. I just think that new people bring in fresh ideas, generationally a slightly different perspective, and so it's an important part, I think, of what's going on in the country right now is this next generation of conservative leaders stepping up. And I think Jim's a very good example of that.
Jim Banks is also a veteran. He's a veteran of Afghanistan. He's a Navy man. You're a Marine, so you're crossing over a little bit, although you're both in the sea services. How important is it for us to send more and more veterans of the military to the United States Congress?
Yeah, it's a very important thing. One of the crazy things is if you look at the really signal pieces of legislation, the big things that happened right after World War II, the Civil Rights Act, things like that, those were made in Congresses where you had 70, 80, above 80% of the members were veterans, either of World War II or of Korea. And I think that, bring a different perspective to the job. I think they're obviously willing to work hard. They're willing to do the things necessary to get things done. But Jim Banks is a proud veteran of our military. I think he's a guy who did his job, who did his service proudly. And as we confront all these different challenges from Russia to China, Venezuela. We have a challenge pretty much in every continent in the world right now. It's important for a guy like Jim Banks to bring that veteran's perspective.
Now, J.D. Vance, Senator Vance, when I went out and did the first debate in Ohio in 2021, there were 6 Republicans. They were all good, fine candidates. They were all legitimate candidates running. It was an exhausting primary that you survived and you won the general election handily. I just don't think Republicans should waste that much money on primaries, and I don't think they should waste that much time. I like Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania. I haven't picked anyone in Ohio because I think both Bernie Moreno and Matt Dolan are going to run. They're both fine candidates. They're on the stage with you. Generally, though, if we've got a great candidate standing up early, like Jim Banks in Ohio, in Indiana, and Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, I want to clear the field. Is there anything wrong with clearing the field?
Hugh, I come at this from both sides, right? I mean, obviously, I was a total upstart when I started running. People didn't think I had really any chance of winning. I was at 1% of the polls, and I do think that a competitive primary does test a person's mettle and make sure that they can take a punch and then counterpunch without being totally knocked out by it. But I think, generally speaking, when we've got a very solid candidate, a guy who clearly knows how to win elections, and Jim Banks definitely knows how to win elections, I do think there's some virtue to letting that person have a clearer field so that they can focus on the task of beating the Democrats. Indiana is obviously a pretty red state, but Democrats have won recently statewide in the not too distant past, and we don't want to screw this up. I think Jim Banks is going to win the primary, whether it's competitive or not competitive. But it does seem like in Indiana, at least with Mitch Daniels dropping out, this is not going to be that competitive of a primary, but who knows?
Yeah, we also look at Pennsylvania. Dave McCormick is a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. He's a little bit older than my test. Are you going to get involved in Pennsylvania?
I haven't talked to Dave, actually. I'm not opposed to getting involved in Pennsylvania. before I make any decision there. I think he ran a fine primary campaign, and frankly, to get as close as he did against the Trump endorsement is no small feat. I think he lost that primary by 900 votes. So he's clearly a solid guy. We'll see who else runs in Pennsylvania, but we have to win that seat. And I think if we get the right candidate, Hugh, we can win that seat. Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016. Obviously, Pat Toomey won in 2016. It is not a blue state. It's a purple state, but the right Republican can definitely win.
Let's also talk about the other two border states. In West Virginia, Governor Justice sure sounds like he's running for Senate. I think he will blow out Joe Manchin. In fact, I think Joe Manchin will retire rather than get beaten by Governor Justice. Do you have any opinions on that one, JD?
Yeah, I suspect that'll be a pretty tough primary just because it is West Virginia. Hopefully not so tough that these candidates destroy themselves. And this is maybe the point to make about competitive primaries. It's one thing if people run energetic campaigns where they work to earn the votes of the people. That's exactly as it should be. It's something else to spend $100 million tearing down fellow Republicans. That's, of course, what happened in Ohio during our primary. I'm certainly hopeful we can avoid that in Ohio in 2022, and I'd love to avoid that in West Virginia in 23, and I'd love to avoid that in West Virginia as well. I do think that Joe Manchin is unfortunately just not in line with where his constituents in West Virginia are. He's taken some hard votes against the energy industry when that provides a lot of good jobs and is frankly one of the reasons why we have the inflation crisis we do today. So I suspect you're right that Joe Manchin will not serve another term representing West Virginia. We'll see who ultimately gets to take him on.
Now, one of the parties that's in a mess is that team up north comes from a state that is in a mess. Pennsylvania Republican Party is in a mess. The Ohio Republican Party is in pretty good shape. I don't have any opinion on Michigan at all. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to me. Does it seem to you that Michigan should be that much different from Ohio's politics?
No, it really shouldn't. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased against Michigan, Hugh, because I'm an Ohio guy. But separating interstate rivalries, it really should not have two Democratic senators. The thing that's important for folks to appreciate is it's be a popular incumbent than it is to win an open seat. Right. This is why Sherrod Brown is a tough guy in 2024, even though Ohio is trending more red. It's why we have such a good opportunity with Debbie Stabenow stepping down. We don't have to face a popular, well-known, well-supported incumbent. We have the opportunity to take on somebody who's relatively new to politics and doesn't have that statewide name recognition. So if we get the right candidate in Michigan, I think we can win that seat. The problem, as you said, Hugh, is it seems to me from an outsider's perspective like the Michigan Republican Party is just not as strong as the Ohio Republican Party.
No, it's not. And hopefully they will coalesce around a veteran and someone who's younger rather than older. Let me talk about Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno. I don't expect you to endorse today in that, and I gather the Secretary of State might get in as well. I am hopeful, and I will go to Ohio whenever they want me to moderate a debate between them. I think the more debates, the merrier among serious people. Do you agree with that, JD?
I do. I think it's very good. It's very good for the voters to get to see it. It's good practice for the candidates. Of course, the debates were a huge part of the general. We had some primary debates. And yeah, Hugh, I'm not ready to endorse yet. I like Matt Dolan. Bernie Moreno is a dear friend, was very helpful to us primary in the general election last time around. So we'll see what ultimately unfolds there. But I do think we're going to have a very strong candidate come out of that field in Ohio.
Now, I want to switch over to presidential politics with you, JD, and then go back to the work of a new senator. President Trump campaign in New Hampshire and South Carolina this weekend. McKay Coppins has a piece in The Atlantic that says only a very small group of people want Trump to be back in the race. That's just wrong. It's not true. There's at least 25 to 40% of the Republican Party that wants him to be the nominee in a hardcore way. Why do Beltway reporters just write things that are not true?
I don't know, Hugh. I think it's just because the social circle that they run in, and maybe McKay Coppin's social circle, nobody wants Trump to run. But in Ohio Republican circles, I'd say well over half the people in our party want Trump to run and will vote for him in the primary if he does. Look, I'm planning to support the president in 24. I'm actually going to have an article come out here in the next couple of days that explains why. But the simple fact is Donald Trump's policies were incredibly good for this country, and he is very popular among Republican voters. That doesn't mean he's going to be given the nomination, of course. Who knows what's going to happen in a potentially competitive primary. But I think he has he deserves a chance to govern again. And certainly Republican voters, a lot of them are on his side. There are a lot.
Are you going to endorse Donald Trump in this article, Senator Vance?
That is the plan, Hugh. But when I lay it out in my own words, I won't do that on your show.
Oh, well, you just did. I mean, that's a double announcement. You endorsed Trump and Jim Banks. Let me close with this. How do you like being a freshman senator?
It's fun, Hugh. I'm having a good time. It's a little slow here. The Democrats have not had that many votes. The business of the Senate has not really started. I think we're going to get committee assignments here in the next couple of days. So it's still a little slow going. I guess it's not the worst thing with the Democrats in control, but I'm having a good time. I pinch myself every day, man. It's a great honor to serve.
Well, thank you for making lots of news on the Hugh Hewitt Show, endorsing Jim Banks and Donald Trump on the same day, JD. We like that a lot. Keep coming back whenever you want to make news, and thank you for picking the Hugh Hewitt Show. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Hugh. Take care.
You know what? That's a double. That's a double endorsement from JD Vance on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Jim Banks for Senate, Indiana. Donald Trump for president in 2024.